Good afternoon, everyone. I bet you can barely hear me through this mask, so I'm going to take this off. This is my second episode on my YouTube channel. Today is Friday, June 26th. And now you'll hear me better, so I'll say that again. Today is Friday, June 26th, 2020. This is the second episode of my YouTube channel, and I'm here on the beautiful green grass near the Barnstable Town Hall building, which you can see behind me. It's a somewhat windy day, but the humidity is a lot less than yesterday, which has made for a pleasant day. So today I'm going to talk a bit more about my own personal background from when I was a kid up to the present moment. So the purpose of this video is basically to provide my viewers, all 6 of you, with a summary of who I am and what my formative influences have been. So this will be a longer video than yesterday, which was about 10 minutes. And I appreciate you watching, and I hope you'll tell your friends as I continue to make new content. So yesterday, I gave a little lesson in how to say my name, and I'm going to repeat it briefly today for those of you who are still trying to wrap your brains around it. So for many years, I told people how to say my name in a way that wasn't exactly very effective, and then very recently I found a better way. So what I tell people is think of a bear, like a polar bear, a black bear, brown bear, grizzly bear. So say bear. Now add an N to it, bairn, and then add a T sound at the end of that, bairnt. So bear, bairn, bairnt. And if you're in Germany where people have my name commonly, some people will roll the R a little bit and it'll be like Bernd. So you can say Bernd or Bernd. Either one I'll answer to, as well as other versions of my name. As I said yesterday, when I was a kid, my parents called me Bernie, which I was not a huge fan of. So today I'm talking about my background. I was born in Texas in the 1970s. I attended public school throughout all of my primary education, all the way up to high school. I graduated from Newman Smith High School in Carrollton, Texas in 1991. So yes, some of you who are watching were not born yet in 1991, and I do hope that I'll get viewers from the younger adult bracket. So I finished high school in 1991. I promptly went off to Texas A&M University, where I completed an undergraduate degree in atmospheric science, and also known as meteorology. And basically those are the people that study the atmosphere and study how to do weather forecasting. And now you may be asking yourself, why in the world did you get interested in that particular profession? There's 2 major reasons why. One, anyone who's lived in Texas for any length of time knows that the weather there can be very volatile. Spring often features hailstorms and high winds and sometimes tornadoes. Summer is quite the experience of day after day after day of hot weather. Fall brings changeable weather once again, and occasionally we do get a hurricane hit the state like we had with Hurricane Harvey a few years ago. And then winter can be actually the most eventful and volatile time of the year because of the significant difference in the air masses that are moving across Texas. So sometimes we'll have an ice storm, sometimes it will be 75 degrees, sometimes it snows, and sometimes it's cloudy and drizzly and pretty Seattle-like for days at a time. So I got interested in the weather because of the volatility of the Texas weather cycle. And I can specifically give a great example of how volatile it can be. So one year when I was probably about 12 or 13, I was visiting my aunt and uncle, and we had a hailstorm at something like 2:30 in the morning. And the hail was not pea-sized, and it wasn't even marble-sized. It was probably about halfway between marble size and golf ball size. And a golf ball thrown very fast at a car windshield will do damage. So I awoke that night to the sound of hail hitting the house, including the skylight where on the second floor of my aunt and uncle's house. So it can be a very interesting and scary experience to endure the weather of Texas for 1 year, let alone for many, many years at a time. My second reason that I got interested in this particular profession was the opportunity to be of public service and broadcast myself on the radio, actually. When I was in college, I worked for the National Weather Service during the summers when I was not in school. And one of my favorite activities at the time was to, and this was back in the 90s when this is how it was done, was to record the weather forecasts, the current weather statement. They also had a cartridge to record for agricultural weather forecasting. And obviously, if there were severe weather watches or warnings, we also would do statements for that. So one of my favorite activities was actually putting my voice on the radio. And at the time, I didn't think much of it, but I was very much someone who loved the arts and performance. So it made sense that I would get involved in something where I could broadcast myself to the larger community. So after finishing school, I went on to do a couple of graduate degrees much more recently. The last one I completed about 10 years ago, and I have worked throughout the 2010s. I worked primarily in the field of marine affairs and marine policy. I worked for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and in a future episode, I will talk more about what the NOAA National Marine Sanctuary System is. So I've had quite an eclectic educational history, and it's been a fun journey. I completed my first degree, like I said, in Texas. I completed my 2 graduate degrees in California, so I had the very great pleasure of living in California for many years and living in a place with a very great diversity of people, which was a wonderful experience for me. So I'm also going to speak a little bit about my hobbies. I have long been a fan of stargazing. I first became really enthusiastic about that when I was a kid. I went to New Mexico one summer with my dad, and we went actually to a ski resort, which at the time was not actually open because it was the summer when we went there. And I can still vividly remember all these years later the quality of the sky and how there was so little pollution, both from pollutants in the atmosphere as well as very, very little light pollution. And anyone who is a stargazing enthusiast knows that stargazing in a big city is usually quite the challenging task because of the amount of light pollution that we generate throughout the world. And there's some fascinating websites that you can find if you just Google stargazing or dark sky viewing. You'll find a lot of resources for yourself if you're interested in stargazing. And later on, after I finished my first degree, I actually got the chance to do some stargazing experiences to facilitate them with the leadership of my mentor, Dr. Pamela Colorado, who I met when I was in graduate school in Oakland, California. So, that is one of my hobbies. I also have always enjoyed the arts, like I alluded to earlier. I enjoy both the visual arts as well as the performing arts. That's why it's kind of natural for me to do a YouTube channel. I enjoy performing arts, both being a performer as well as watching performances like theater shows, plays. I've never really been to the opera much, but I would certainly enjoy going, especially if I had a companion to take with me. So I enjoy the arts. I have long been a fan of painting as well. And my mother actually was a very skilled individual. I have long believed that my artistic skills probably came more from my mother's side of the family than my dad's side of the family. My mother worked as a nurse when she was a young adult, and she was a very talented musician as well. And one of my favorite stories that my Aunt Carol told me was that one winter, apparently my mother made her own coat. Now, making your own coat is not exactly a skill that a lot of places teach in the 21st century, from what I know of. So I was very impressed to hear that story. I never did actually see the coat, get a chance to wear the coat. I don't know what it looks like, but just hearing that story was a very inspiring story about my mother's life. And on the subject of my parents, so my parents met in Europe in 1970. My dad was studying in Vienna, Austria one summer, and he actually met my future mother, his future wife, in Germany when he was researching his maternal ancestral heritage in Germany. And perhaps at a later episode I can share more about the details of that. Anyway, they met in Germany. They were married in Germany in December of 1970, and I was born some years later. Like I said, I'm not going to give away my exact age right now. So, that's a bit more about my background and where I've come from. I am able to speak the German language. I took German in high school, and I took more language in college. And I even took a course or two at the Goethe Institute in San Francisco. All told, together, I have taken about 7 years of the language. My conversational skills are pretty rusty right now because I have not had much chance to use them, but my reading skills are still quite good. I can pretty much make my way through a newspaper and understand a majority of what I am reading. So, I'm going to close today's episode by talking a bit more about the state of the world now. The state of the world is partly what inspired me to launch this YouTube channel and start producing content, even if I don't get a lot of viewers for a while. So the state of the world right now is very turbulent, I would say. It's a time in the world that harkens back to other monumental years in American history and in world history. I saw a comment on Facebook not long ago basically saying that in the year 2020 we have a pandemic like we had in 1918 with the Spanish flu, an economic collapse like we had in 1929, and a racial affairs status that harkens back to the late 1960s, in those turbulent years when some of the most important legislation that we have seen passed in the last 50 to 60 years was passed, like the Fair Housing Act, the Voting Rights Act, and so on. So we are, in a sense, and I think this is very true, living in a year that is like 1918, 1929, and 1968-69 all at once. And that is a lot to deal with. So, like a lot of you out there watching this, I have found it very stressful these days to live day to day. The pandemic has adversely affected my life. I have had friends that have become sickened with the virus. I have a good friend who I just learned yesterday was diagnosed as being positive for the virus. And here in Massachusetts, thankfully, I feel fairly safe because many people, most people, are wearing their masks most of the time. And our governor, Governor Baker, has done a very fine job in helping the state manage the pandemic and to slowly reopen. So we are by no means fully reopened. I'm not aware of any states that are truly, completely, 100% reopened and functioning as they did before March of this year. So it's a difficult time for many of us. I wanted to bring something into the world to offer that would calm us down, help us mellow out, help us find some joy in the day. And so here I am, as I said yesterday, launching this channel designed to educate, inspire, and entertain people. So that's basically it for today. The coming episodes of my channel are going to feature some profiles of influential people in my life who have been a source of great inspiration and education and even entertainment as well. So look forward to those episodes coming soon. And then after I feature those episodes focusing on influential figures in my life, I'm going to then move in the direction of sharing episodes that focus on social and political commentary, as well as episodes that have more of an educational focus in mind. So I welcome you to follow along. I will post content as often as I can. I ideally would like to make it a daily process, and that's going to take a little bit of getting used to because I have a pretty busy life outside of doing this whole project. But my goal is to appear once a day, create a new episode every day, and upload it to my site. So I welcome you to follow along. I'm also on social media. You can find me on Twitter at Advocate0914. I am currently on Facebook, but will be leaving that platform most likely later this year, as I do not agree with how Facebook has evolved into a place where a lot of people spend their time tearing each other to shreds, basically, verbally. When social media first began, I thought it could be a great influence in the world. It still can be, but like so many things, it has also been used in some really harmful ways. So I am reassessing my own presence on social media, my own online presence, because I don't want to be a part of the problems in our country. I would rather be part of the solution. So enjoy your day. Know that you are not the only one dealing with COVID-19 and anxiety and uncertainty and wondering what it will be like day to day. I wonder that the same as you do every single day. So, as a way of closing, I'm reminded of a fun little interchange between two of my favorite characters on Schitts Creek, which is a show that's been on about the last 6 years. I alluded to this program yesterday, and when I just said day after day after day, it reminded me of the scene where Moira, the mother, acts completely clueless about her daughter's heart-wrenching feelings towards her former boyfriend, Ted, and her son, David, tries to clue her in on just how clueless she has been. And he says the following lines, which are my favorite lines that he has ever said in the entire show. And they go, "Okay, I have never heard so many wrong things, one after the other, consecutively in a row." And his mother replies something to the effect of, "David, how was I to know that Ted would be such a trigger all these years later?" So, they are two of my favorite characters on TV these days. I am very sad to see them go, and I will be making references to them again in the future. So thank you to Dan Levy and Catherine O'Hara for your great entertainment in that series. It has been a great source of joy and inspiration to me. So I'm logging off for today. I hope you've been able to hear this fully through the breeze. I'll be back tomorrow, is my plan. Signing off, this is Bernd Christian Gills saying goodbye.